You won't get anywhere knowing just definitions. And so in this video, I'm going to show you how some real data analysis looks like on a much more simpler side. Now, lately, I've been talking a lot about definitions such as what is marketing, what is market research, what is sample size, but let's get a bit into more on how to do these things. Now, I had ChatGPT come up with an Excel file with over 200 data points, and it's not the most perfect, but it made things really simple for me. So the statistical analysis that we're going to be going with is a simple OLS regression. Now, this allows you to really understand kind of what factors are driving the variable that you're trying to understand. And so with that said, let's go over to the MacBook and I'll do a bit of editing if I remember. So here we're in Excel, and one thing that's really important is to really know your variables. And so one thing that typically when you're doing a market research is understanding what your key objectives are. What are you trying to learn? What are you trying to understand? Who your customer or your client is, whether that's the internal stakeholders or whether that's your actual customers. And so in this made up file by ChatGPT, we see that there's several factors such as sales, price, advertising, promotion, and store size. Now, right off the bat, I see that there's a lot of decimals and big numbers that goes in the hundreds, but for promotion, that seems to be full of 0 and 1s. And so that tells me that this variable is a binary thing, which tells me if there was a promotion or not, where 0 is typically false and 1 is true. Now this kind of looks like a really simple marketing mix model as well. That kind of tells me what variable is playing a role when it comes to sales. And so for example, this might usually just include how much money we spent on advertising. In this Excel file, there is included of the price and store size as well as the sales. And so easily we can understand that the Y variable should be the sales, since we're interested in understanding the key drivers as to what affects sales. And we are hypothesizing that price, how much we advertise, if there was a promotion, and our store size, probably in square feet, are playing a role in our sales. And so one neat little thing that Excel does is allows you to do really simple data analysis through this tool. This can be done in the Excel settings, and I believe that you might need some Excel plan or something from this. And within the analysis tools, you can really select just a regression, but they have a lot of tests that you can do depending on binary or continuous metrics that are more time series based, where you would use a T or a Z test, or even sometimes a chi-square test as well. That's really important for advertising, but that's beyond this video. For now, we're just going to be selecting a regression. And here I kind of already did a test already, but you select your Y variable, which as I said is our sales. And then we also have our X range, which is going to be the rest of the data. Now, another thing to be really cautious about is when performing data analysis, you want to ensure that your data is clean and has integrity. What that means is that there is ethics to collecting data, and additionally you want to ensure that there's no duplications, there's no false information, and that people are genuinely answering your survey or however else you're getting this data. Now, another great thing that we can do is take confidence level, and this tells us how confident we want our results to be. And so we can say about 95% that the results we get from this simple OLS regression is 95%. Now, it's important to also make sure that you note there's labels if you're including the labels, which I do have ticked here. And so we're going to click OK. And as you can see, we get a summary output. Now, it tells us a bit about the statistics, and I'll go a bit into understanding some of the key statistics that you might want to look out for. And this is really, really basic. Now, a really simple one that you want to look out for is R-square. R-square simply tells you how well the model fit according to the data. And so in terms of your coefficients, which is your X variables, it tells you how well it explains the Y variable and the shifts of that. And so according to our model, about 88% of the effects that are occurring is explainable from price, advertising, promotion, and store size. Now, adjusted R-square is a bit, I'd say, more confident wise. It adjusts for perhaps any errors and reflects more of a true model fit, With standard error, this gets to understand kind of your error bars to see how much range of error there is. And the observations are simply just your end count, or how many data points there are, or how many individuals did you survey. And so if we look at our X variables, price, advertising, promotion, and store size, we see that we get these coefficients. Now, coefficient tells us essentially if we get 1 sales, how much does price increase? And so an increase in sales by 1 means that our price is usually around perhaps $2.42 or 43 cents if you want to round it up. If we want to price our product at about, say, $5.22, typically that means that we might get 2 sales. And so that's really important to understand the price and sales and kind of, where they might intersect or where you might drop off. With advertising, we see that there's a coefficient of 1.26 or 1.27 if you want to round it up. This tells us that with every increase in sale, advertising typically has a row or an effect of about 1.26. Now, of course, I would assume that this is in dollar metrics, and so for every $1.26 that we spend, we get about 1 sale, which is pretty good if you compare the cost per acquisition or return on ad spend. You're probably going to spend way less if you're only spending $1 to get a customer. Now for promotion, it's a bit more difficult just because it's on a binary scale. We see that it has a positive coefficient of 9.12, meaning that for every 1 sale we get, it seems as though there's a coefficient of 9 in promotion. And so what this might tells us that it might take 9 promotions or somewhere along those days, 9 days, or perhaps 9 weeks to even get a sale. But it's hard to tell since ChatGPT made up this data and I don't have any context to it. Now, in terms of the store size, it seems that we have about 0.57, whatever our metric it is. And so every 1 sale, it seems as though we have an increase in 0.57 of whatever store size metric, square foot or whatever. And so another important metric to look at as well is p-value. Now, p-value tells you if the model you're running is statistically significant or not, or even if your coefficients or X variables are statistically significant and if you can trust it. Now, generally, things that are not statistically significant, you wouldn't trust it or make any decisions for your business off of it. But as you can see here, all of these are in the negative, being all below 0.05. Now, generally, the rule of thumb is that below 0.05 is considered significant. Anything between 0.05 to 0.1 requires more data, more surveys, more respondents, or even deeper investigation. But anything above 0.1, just throw it out. Now, we also have this thing such as lower and upper 95%. What it tells us is how low and the maximum that we can believe the coefficients to be. So generally, I like to believe what the coefficients are, but sometimes if we share this to a stakeholder who is really pessimistic and want to know the lowest of the driver, in case we don't want to over forecast, we can tell them the lower 95%. Or perhaps if we want to tell the maximum possibility or even provide a time series graph where we have lower, middle, and upper 95%, we can provide both statistics to shows all the possibility. Now, another key thing to really understand is managerial and statistical significance, because sometimes you can find things that are statistically significant, but they're not managerially significant. What that means is basically, should you do something about it based off of the data findings? Not everything that you find in a test or market research project, whether that's full scale or not, should be acted upon. For example, you might find that 5 employees are telling the truth that they don't get paid enough, but really that's out of 100 people, and 30 people say that they enjoy working, they get paid enough, and there's purpose. It's just that they don't get enough PTO or something. You might actually listen to more of those 30 people than those 5, if that makes sense. That's a really bad example, but that kind of helps to understand coefficients and size differences on what's worth acting upon. But that's a really simple explanation of how to use Excel in its really basic data analysis tools. And this is enough to even make decisions and understand your customers on a deeper level than simply doing a count analysis. Now, the magic really all comes down to how you write the surveys, the hypothesis you're testing, and if you even have the right problem, and sometimes if you even have a problem in the first place. Now, if you really enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe for more and stay in tune for more market research.